Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the Rec Yard every Wednesday night. Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday night. We are on the Rec Yard Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toochi.
Toochi just flying into the studio last minute like usual. I was actually getting ready to post on our Facebook page how you do me wrong every week. You hate me.
Look, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to bust her out right here, and I'll never hear the end of it. I was on the phone with Lori, catching up about her day and my day. And I said, "Oh my God, there's 2 minutes. I got to go."
So you're going to blame your tardiness on our friend?
That's correct.
Carrie, hi, nice to see you. Thanks everybody for joining us. Y'all, thank you for hitting the like button and the heart button and all of that good stuff, tapping your screen, all that good stuff. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing this live. We appreciate you guys so much. If you are listening wherever you hear your favorite podcasts, please leave us a review. That just helps us reach an even broader audience. We are talking about protests tonight, a very hot topic across the nation, in Texas in particular, with the universities. We want to talk about how women organize and protest in the prison system, what that looks like, compare it to what's going on in real time out here. I think it's going to be a good show. Before we do that, look how smooth, and you're not talking, nothing's happening. Let's do a weekly recap. Do you even have a clue what has happened to you this week?
I don't really. It's just been so much. It's been so much. It's so much, Marci.
So is that a no?
Well, this weekend I anticipated going to Dallas for y'all's event, and then a friend of mine, I was really worried about some of her medical stuff. And the night before, I said hi to a friend of ours that hadn't seen in a while, and that was lit. She tried to call you.
Yeah, I picked up my phone and saw her calling. Kanita Butler, aka Star. That is my nephew from the penitentiary, my very good, sweet little nephew who works at a club. And so you were at a club, but I was sound asleep. And I have to leave my ringer on because I don't know when those kids are going to be calling. So I jumped up out of my sleep thinking it was one of the kids, and it was a FaceTime from Star. And yeah.
You didn't know it was me too. You didn't know.
I didn't. I still wouldn't have answered. I was sound asleep, and I was waiting for the follow-up. Like, are you texting me? Because this is what happens when you've been traumatized by the legal system. In the back of my mind was, what if, like, I hit that deny button or the silence to silence it, and then I laid there and thought, what if she was trying to record the police because they were doing something crazy, or like and I thought, did I just mess up? And so I waited. Now, I wasn't worried enough clearly to call back, but I did wait thinking she's going to call again or text, and if I get another one, I'm answering it right away. So yeah, I'm glad it was just because you were hanging out with her. You took the Rec Yard to the club.
It was a lot of fun. I went to the gay clubs to watch the drag shows, and people don't know, I walk all the way to downtown and wander around there sometimes, probably dangerously. I don't really care. And so I said, well, I'm going to stop by and say hi to Star before I take off. And that's really all the fun thing I did, right? Like, everything else is just meetings and a lot of deadlines. And a lot
Yeah.
of managing things. What was your week like?
Well, we had that event. We had an event in, Dallas, North Dallas, the Richardson area, and it was fantastic. We had a huge turnout. That was really fun. The ladies did a skit. We had an open mic. We had lots of resources there. It was good. Uh, yeah, I was really pleased with it. I feel like I have done so much more than just that, but that seems to be the most exciting other than just playing with the kids. Has anything else happened?
Meetings and meetings. I mean, that's really been it, right?
I do have some, big news that I have to be vague about. Can I spill big news in a vague way?
Do I know about it though in a
No,
real way?
you
Oh,
don't
okay.
know about
Let's
it.
hear it. Let's hear it.
I have big news. One, y'all know y'all may or may not know that I'm working on a couple different shows.
Mm-hmm.
One got picked up for on Tubi.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna that's all I can say right now. That's all I'm allowed to say. But I am really excited. So, that happened and just work. Yeah.
I love me some Tubi.
Yeah. Somebody said I just heard Tubi the other night because I think I was in the car with somebody and she was telling them, "Well, get Tubi. Tubi's free." And I thought, "What the heck is Tubi?" And then I'll be gosh danged if today I didn't get a phone call saying, "Guess what? Tubi wants us." Well, I love Tubi now. Thank you.
Some of my best horror movies that are hard to find are on Tubi.
Okay, well, we're gonna that there's more to come, so I'm excited for that. Let's see, Toonch, we're talking about protesting. Have you guys tell me about and I recently learned that you guys is not inclusive language, and I'm gonna try to stop saying
God.
it. I just can't keep up with everything.
You just say y'all.
Y'all is inclusive.
You say just say y'all.
Yeah. So did y'all over there at
There.
the, Patrick O'Donnell
Don't
Daniel
you do
unit,
that. Don't you do that. Refuse.
over there at the Mountain View unit, did y'all ever organize? Did y'all ever have any issues where you had to stand together? Now, I know your prison time consists of more than that unit, but I am curious about that unit because as far as women's prisons go in Texas, that is undisputably the best one. It does have air conditioning for most of the population that lives there, not all, but and they fed you pretty well, so I'm just wondering, did y'all ever organize or protest, or was there ever an incident?
Yeah, Marcy, you're right. Mountain View has always been cleaner, well cared for, better conditions, more campus structured, right? But with that came an incredible amount of petty, squeezing, nitpicking, rigid, petty rules, right? We all experience that at all the units, but it was certainly at a whole nother level here. And I remember and this is actually one of my better performing TikToks because it's fascinating. We talk about women do things differently than men. We don't do the riots and the very drastic outward protesting that would get us in trouble. We do a lot of covert, quiet resisting. And so they were telling us that we had to fit everything into our lockbox, which, we've talked about here before, which is maybe the size of 2 or 3 toolboxes, right? It's not very big. Everything, Marcy, all of your hygiene, all of everything except your appliances.
They want you to spend $100 every 2 weeks at commissary and then fit that, your clothes, your hygienes,
Everything.
everything in that little right?
Right? So that's your clothes, your hygiene, your food, your paper products, your books, your textbooks, all of that. Other units, even though they had pretty strict compliance rules, there was still, your school books could go under your bed, your clothes could go folded neatly at the end, and you'd have a bag of hygiene that you could keep out on your table or underneath. Well, they were like, no, you can put it all in there, which is gross because everything, if you get it around a bar of Dial soap, everything's going to taste like Dial, even if it's sealed. It's crazy.
Baby, on the Dr. Lane Murray unit, during my time, everything went in your box. There was, I think I could leave my college book out. It had to be slid under your box. No water or anything out. Hygiene's everything. I think that it all, unless I'm remembering wrong, but go ahead.
So
y'all was mad about it.
They were mad.
Tortillas tasting like Dial soap.
God bless. And you know that taste. And you just mad. As soon as you bite into it, you're like, I got to throw all of it away. So they were pissed off. And they were like, no, we're not doing this because don't have room for my commissary. So what happened was that everybody quietly decided that for the good meals, for the big meals, like fried chicken and all that, right? Nobody was going to turn out. And then for the really bad meals, like the pork noodle casserole or, those Sunday lunches that were like just sandwiches or something, the whole unit was going to turn.
Yeah.
So the kitchen would run out of food or have to throw food away. So that was one way. The other way was every turnout, I don't care what it is. If you're in this dorm and you're not at work, you're turning out. Rec, every time, church, everything, the whole unit. It got so bad that they were like, okay, well then maybe we'll just have half of the unit go to rec or church. And like the staff was completely overwhelmed. What is going on? And they come to find out that you better change these compliance policies or we're going to keep doing this. So they said, okay, guess what? You can leave some of this stuff out and we're just going to go back to the way it was. And that was that.
Nice. Organizing from inside of prison. Effective. Yeah. Effectively organized.
Nobody got in trouble, right? You can't get in trouble for turning out for rec or for hot dogs or something, right? Like they found ways to cause pressure that we couldn't get in trouble for. Like if it was just, and I used to try to tell the girls that worked in Braille, y'all lay it down, refuse work because this facility makes money. They were too scared. They were like, I don't want to get a case. I don't want that. Well, this was a way that we could figure out. I used to call this kind of stuff secret sabotage. Like, what are the ways that we can sabotage what the unit without actually getting in trouble?
Yes. Yes, very smart. We did a little something behind the poor kitchen workers, man. They got that was a way that they could see. That was a way that they had something to see. Oh, we've made them mad. And what we did is we had a unit of 1,200 women and, one dorm of those was locked down, housed, but everybody else, every single meal we turn out. Every meal. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. We were waking each other up. Breakfast, y'all, they start serving breakfast at 4 a.m. now. Maybe earlier. If count clears, it's not unusual for them to call the first run of chow at 10 or 15 till 4 a.m. a.m. Nobody is wanting to get up. There's a saying that one of the men told me in the men's prisons. They say, sleep late, lose weight. Did y'all say that? Sleep late, lose weight because you're not getting those calories in the morning. And for men that are really trying to work out and buff up in prison, they need to get up for the breakfast. Anyways, yeah, and we just overwhelmed their little chow hall. What would happen is by the time the 70% of the unit had been fed, they're plumb out of food and they're having to make more, which isn't easy when the meat's frozen and, right. And we'd be waiting. So chow, instead of taking an hour and a half to run the whole unit, it was taking 4 hours and it was just a huge, so we did that. There was another time, y'all, Mr. Ortiz, shout out to Mr. Ortiz and your lovely bride that works with you on the Dr. Lane Murray unit. I can't remember her last name. I don't think it's Ortiz. Don't be a smart ass. Tooch. Anyways, he was, I'm just going to say, he was like a troll of a little correctional officer. God bless him. He was a hater. When
God.
he came in, you know, the officers that came in and people would boo? Like, we
Mm.
would boo. He would walk in and we would boo him, like, "Boo, no, boo." I mean, he was just that kind of, anyway, he came in one night. I was in F dorm, which was like the good kids. It's where the good folks lived with no disciplinary cases, and there's 125 women in our dorm, and he comes in and he says, "Sit down. Everybody sit down." And the people that were like walking in the day room found a seat and they're like, "What in the world?" And he's like, "I'm talking to everybody." And he looks at us that are in our cubicles, in our tiny little cubicle space, and he's like, "Sit down. The rules say you have to be sitting down if you're not going from point A to point B." And we're like, "What?" Yeah, I mean, he was like, "No exercising. No, you're not standing up talking to your neighbor. If you know," and that's, of course, completely not policy. And I had not been in prison very long, but those girls got riled up about it. And they were already used to kind of giving him a little bit of the business because of his attitude when he came to work. But so everybody was just like, "Hell no, we're not doing that." And everybody stood up. Everybody. He came in at 6 o'clock, counted. So it was like 7 o'clock at night. Most of the dorm is there. Most of the dorm at 7 p.m. Most everybody was there. 110 women probably just stood up everywhere. And nobody would sit down. "I'm going to write cases." And we're like, "Write them all." Like, let your supervisor get 110 cases, or whatever. And finally he just walked out and it was fine. He just didn't bring it up again the rest of the night, but we stuck together. That was a little
Mhm.
bit of hey, we're doing something. I have one more story. Shall I tell it now?
Yeah.
So during COVID, the phones
Mm.
were off.
Oh boy.
We had gotten in the habit of every morning just walking by and picking the phone up to see if it would work. And it was early, a lot of people asleep on the weekend, and my friend comes by and she's like, knocks on my bunk wall, on my cubicle wall, this metal wall that kind of shakes like thunder when you shake on it. And she's like shaking on it. She's like, "Marcy." I'm like, "What? What is it?" She said, "Girl, the phones are on." I said, "We're allowed to use them?" She goes, "Shh, nobody knows they're on yet, but they're on." I'm like, "Holy crap." I mean, maybe I don't even go brush my teeth. I wipe the little sleepy from mine, slip my shower shoes on, and go straight to that phone. And we're on the phone. People see me and her on the phone. So then now the third and fourth phones are taken. There might have only been three. I can't remember if it was three or four. Anyways, the officer in the picket's like, "What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing?" Well, now there's a line for the phones because no one has talked to their family in weeks.
Mm.
No one has heard their family's voices in weeks or longer because of COVID, because COVID was the excuse. COVID was the reason. And so anyway, that was it. She's like pounding on the picket, which is like this little glass box where the law sits, and the glass is shaking, and she's just dang near giving herself a heart attack. And she gets on the radio, and here comes rank, and it was Sergeant Tyson. Shout out to another real winner there. Um, and she comes and she's like, "Get off the phone, get off the phone." And baby, we did not. We weren't. You 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 were going to have to, it was
You're gonna have to
going to be a
spray us.
riot. You're going
You're
to
gonna
have
have to
to spray
spray
the
us.
whole dorm. You're going to have to suit up on the entire dorm while people were on the phone with their families. That's what saved us. That's what saved us. Because if the phones are on, first of all, that means, I mean, the institution is the one who turns them on and off.
Right.
So we knew that already. We're supposed to be on them if they're on, and then they came back the next day and said, "Okay, you get to make one 10-minute phone call." Nobody abided by that because, again, the institution sets that limit. So
Mhm.
if that phone lets me talk, at that time it was 30 minutes, or I think it had already gone to 30. We're talking to our people, that's how we
Mhm.
did it. But anyways, that was really, it was charged up, They were short-staffed or we would have had more officers in there.
Right. Right. Well, and I think it goes to this, uh, the level of you just get fed up and you just get tired, and once that happens, you become unafraid.
Baby, we were already locked down.
Right.
Nobody was getting rec. Nobody was getting day room. Nobody was getting commissary. What else are you going to do to
What are
us
you going to
as a
do
whole
to me?
dorm?
Right.
We're
So
already, yeah, we're already.
So come right up every single case. Come right, start at bed 1 and end at, how many were in each pod in F dorm?
102.
Right. So just start. Now, I want to tell you, when last year when they had the big lockdown, right? The big sudden lockdown, and they brought all the drug dogs in, and I remember we got some correspondence that someone detailed what happened when they brought one of the guard dogs in the building at Mountain View, and the handler was, and those handlers with those dogs were not good people. Like they were mean.
Nice. You're
They
right.
were mean to those
Now I
dogs.
know one, Miss Anderson. She was good. She was nice to the animals. She was a regular officer who enforced rules, but didn't treat us like, Go ahead.
Well, and I mean, I remember the guy that would bring over the drug dog to Mountain View. Those dogs were scrawny. They had patches of hair. They looked like alley dogs. They didn't look like police dogs. They didn't look like well cared for animals. And they were mean to them, not just stern, they're not a pet. But anyway, so I already knew. So when the girl said that he kicked it, like he kicked the dog in front of them. And baby, that dorm went boom, boom, unhinged. And Mountain View girls typically are, the older ladies that need AC. They're just not rowdy young women like that. But those older women lost their shit. And it was damn near a riot. Like they were like, y'all need to calm down. We're going to write y'all up. And they were like, Dad! Like screaming, banging on the wet. Like they went ballistic. And I think it's just, what you just reached this point of this. Women will be angry and they will stick together once there is it's like breaking the sound barrier. Like there's something that happens that just, there's no going back.
Mm-hmm.
And it is I think that it challenges authority in ways that men don't. Men are more, I think physically threatening or menacing, right? When they are in the throes of protesting or rioting or something like that. And, but when women resist, well, we see it in our advocacy work. When women resist, there's a special type of rage and anger that we encounter that I just think that men don't.
No, I couldn't agree more. Just from my experience of talking to my brother-in-law, for example, incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, there have been times where we get a phone call from him at this weird time at night. We're like, what are you doing? Why are you out of your cell? He's like, oh, we didn't rack up tonight. I said, they didn't rack you up. Rack you up for layman's ears means go back to your bed at nighttime and get locked in your cell. Rack it up, right? So he's like, no, we just decided. So, what do you mean you decided? He said, yeah, they said rack up. We said no. So we're in the day room. I said, everybody? He said, yeah. I said, oh my gosh. And he was just so casual. And that since then, that has happened numerous times. And he's been on numerous units since then. Like it's not just, that would have never happened. They say
Absolutely
rack it up.
not.
Everybody racks up. They say count time. Everybody gets in line for count.
Well, it's like what I told a reporter recently, that in terms of like bad work conditions or unsafe things, I'm like, women just do it. They just think they're told, and so they think, well, if you told me to do that, there must be a reason and it must be safe, so I'll just do it. Right? Like, but I think once we have the awareness about something, now it's different. And there is a resistance and a defiance that is different than men. And it's like, how dare you as a woman challenge me?
Yes. Yes. It is. I think that it is received much more aggressively than our male counterpart. And I wish we should get some old G's that did some time like on Rock and Robert Robinson, and what is it? Rock and Robertson, is that what they call it? And old Ferguson, all the like the stereotypical tough units, Telford, like these units that we're hearing all of this craziness. We ought to get some old G's that did some serious time on those units to kind of compare how their resistance was met compared to our resistance. And I think that we wouldn't be surprised. I was in Skyview. I was at Skyview during the middle of my sentence. I spent some time in the prison psych hospital. If you haven't heard that story, it's a good one. We'll save it for another day. And I was there at that unit. There were multiple floors, and men were on some of those floors, and you could plunge your toilet out and talk to the floors above you and below you. So my cellmate at the time had this dude that was also at Skyview, locked up in a cell above or below us, whatever. And she would talk to him in the toilet. Anyways, it's chow time. And he's like, hang on, I'll be right back. And we just hear, we not just through the toilet, but just almost the walls were shaking in that building. Those men were on fire. They were lit up, everybody pounding, everybody going crazy. And I'm like, what's going on? We're just like something. We think there's some sort of emergency situation. And then he comes back and it quiets down, and she's like, what happened? What's going on? Are you okay? He's like, yeah. My homeboy down the run wanted 2 Kool-Aids. He wanted 2 juices at dinner. They were serving chow. He asked for an extra juice. You know, at Skyview, the carts are already loaded.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to the end of the run, we can physically see there's extra food and there's extra juice. And he wanted that, and the guard was saying no. And those men went ziggity boom. And I'm like, what happened? You know, he got the juice.
But see, Marci, this is why well, one of the reasons why they're so petty with us is because we don't do that. They know that if they tell this man, you're getting a major case for an extra piece of soap, there's going to be some real violence. So they wouldn't dare. They're like, oh, we have bigger fish to fry, so to speak. So, okay, well, you got contraband, throw it away. Right? Oh, y'all were fighting, y'all break it up. I'm okay, I'm going to sign off on this case, just informal resolution. We've got other stuff. And I think women typically tend to go to work, go to the dorm, cook their food, hang out with their girlfriend, see their family at visitation, and just try to make a little nest, a little home, so to speak.
What is this? An extra hair tie holding your ground coffee, your instant coffee bag? Oh, you're getting a case. And then you're going to go to court and you're getting the dirty 30. You're not just getting a case. The way the disciplinary works, and for those of you that don't know, you go to court inside a prison. You go to disciplinary court. So the way it works is there's policy says an officer is supposed to attempt an informal resolution. What would be a logical informal resolution for an extra hair tie? Give me the hair tie. Now you don't have extra.
Right.
That doesn't happen. I've dare I say in 10 years have never seen an officer. Now I have seen them like, you know, you ain't supposed to stop, but I've never seen them write the case and then check informal resolution. I've never seen it. Have you?
That was my one of 2 cases, Marci.
Girl,
first
I forgot about you.
No, but I'm going to tell you what happened. I got my girlfriend, her name was Stephanie. And she was like, and see, both times I got a case, I was like, I know not to do anything. She's like, I want an ice cream. I want a cookie cone. I want a cookie cone. I'm like, ugh. Like, she worked in laundry at Riverside, which, laundry is a hot, sweaty, horrible job. And so they used to have the back open where they could walk out and get the carts and kind of roam around that area. So she's like, on the way back to the dorm, just throw it to me. And I was like, I don't want to, fuck. And she just wore on me, nagged me. So there I go with that damn cookie cone. And the second I tossed it to her, this officer came around the corner and she said, Toom, come here. And I said, at that point, I had made it 9.5 years without a case.
Because you were manipulating the system, ma'am.
well, living in a way that was so drastic and so I don't know how to describe it, just so drastic and paranoid that so I get the case and I tell my BF at the time, her name was Tammy. Okay, Tammy, she was not having a thing with the host squad lieutenant. She wasn't. But he was infatuated with her. So she would get special duty out on the field. And everybody knew it. And everybody said, she looks like his wife. And she did. When I finally met his wife, she was a host squad at Valley or something. And so anyway, I said, will you please go to him and ask him to pull my case? She was like, oh, she was real goody two-shoe, real, I mean, I say that, but I mean, I think she did hire someone to kill her husband. But anyway.
Side note. Side note. Besides that one little thing.
Well, maybe not hired, but manipulated. I'm not sure. Anyway, she goes in and says, would you mind? And he goes, well, I won't throw it out, but I'll mark it as an informally resolved. Toon, don't do that again. And that was, wow. But I'm going to tell you something, Marci. That was the only time I'd ever heard of anybody getting a case.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Now, you're talking about officers pulling cases, and that would happen. That was another way that we would stand together. If I knew you were cool with this officer and that officer came in next shift and the cases are still in the picket, I'm going to say, hey, can you go talk to them? And oftentimes that would work. Or also women organizing. We organized behind those disciplinary cases, and it really didn't matter who you were. If your case was left unattended, and what I'm talking about, folks, is a piece of paper, a form that an officer fills out that means you probably won't talk to your kids for 30 days because you're fixing to get punished, no matter what it was. So that's what I'm talking about. That piece of paper. Once it gets processed, there's not much you can do with it. But when it's still that handwritten, hadn't been in the computer yet, paper.
You see it, you snatch it and tear it to pieces and flush it. I don't give a damn who it belongs to. You see it somewhere, you get it.
Did you ever see anybody hustle by stealing cases? Like, hey, I got your case if you want it. $5-10 worth of commissary.
We know someone that did a lot of time, Marci. I'll tell you later. She was good, baby. She was good, and she would be like, "Okay, I mean, I'll go in there and get it, but it's 50 stamps. It's this amount of money." Like,
ooh, she was expensive.
Oh, because she must have been good. She was the best, and she would go get those cases and wait, and she just wouldn't she would take it and give it to them. Well, she would kind of hold it hostage.
Right.
And be like, okay, so what's up? Are you going to pay me or what? And they would, and then she'd tear it up. She did it consistently, and they knew she was doing it, and they could never, ever catch her.
Good for her. Good for her for helping people not be in trouble over crazy, ridiculous stuff, and B, figuring out how to eat and survive in there, because that's what it really is. My friend, Aon Quigley, and I on the Dr. Lane Murray unit, she was my buddy that when we lived together at that time, we were eating together, cooking together, we're planning our meals around each other's commissary boxes. What you do is whoever you're going to eat with, you're planning your commissary list around and so that was us. Well, we both ended up on commissary restriction. I don't even remember for what, because honestly, there were so many times. So we're like, we were the stealers of the cases in our dorm.
Mm-hmm.
Often. We were often because we were just good at it. I had to go to prison to learn I could do that. I had to go to prison to learn that the hand's quicker than the eye. I stole a case off of a desk in the chapel while the officer was sitting at the desk one time, had it behind my back, bent down talking to the officer, laughing with him, turned around and just scooted it around to the front of me at
Now
resting.
that
Yeah.
Marcy is a talent for, so people, you have to learn that. And I think it is like, even though we didn't organize and I hate to use the word riot, but like have an uprising the way that men did, we found ways, like I said, those are secret sabotages to me that we all knew to do for each other in a very organized, it's an unspoken thing that you just learn. And one of those ways is, like you said, like, you need to get a bunch of people in somewhere. You need to you have to fast talk the officer. You lead their that pulling their
Mhm.
attention away. I'm going
Mhm.
to tell you that when I was in the library, I wanted this book. It was lesbian erotica, okay? Because people would donate books. And we couldn't put certain things on the Wyndham shelf, and another discussion. But I wanted this lesbian erotic book, baby. It was like, man, I want this so bad. And me and Diane were working in the library at the time. And I said, how do the officers would let us take in donated books? They would. They didn't, the workers, right? But there was no way. There was one officer, her name was Miss Banks. I hope you're watching, Miss Banks. You were a thorn in my side. The rest of the ladies, they were nice when they were by themselves, but when they would get into a group, they would kind of be mean girls and nasty. But by themselves, they were fair and good to us. Not Miss Banks. She thought she was, but she was actually very nasty and petty. She was nice to me sometimes, and then other times not. We could have a whole episode on Miss Banks. Anyway, I said, I got to get this past Miss Banks. Now, she was somebody that was hard to get stuff by.
Mhm.
And
She's doing the full pat search.
maybe full pant
She's
search,
she's cupping your panty line, pat
all
search.
of it. And she's watching all the time, like in little tiny, like just, she was so hard to get anything by. And I told Diane, I said, please, please, Diane, I need this book. Please help me. She was like, okay. So we have our library books, and I've got that book squeezed in between my library books, right? Another tactic, right? Like trying to. And so we get I start to get pat searched, and she goes like, well, Miss Carpenter pat searched me, and then I had to hand my books to Miss Banks. And so Miss Banks opened the first one to look at the due date to make sure that it was my day to check all that petty shit, right? So she's about to move to the next book, which is the big lesbo erotic with the tits
The
out.
illegal
Yeah.
book.
So Diane starts, woo, like she launches into, hey, Miss Banks, man, da da da. And have you ever, do you remember that thing that back in the day I was thinking about it, is the chicken dance? But the boop boop boop. So she starts dancing like a chicken.
Oh my gosh.
And so I start laughing, right? I'm like, girl, you crazy. And Miss Banks is like, Thompson, what's wrong with you? And so but at the same time, she's like kind of flipping through the books, but she's looking at Diane, and then she just tosses them to me and says, y'all get out of here. I can't deal with y'all today. And so Diane's always
Diane
like,
saved you.
all the time.
Yeah.
Diane knew how to do that.
That's why you didn't get any cases, because you had people like Diane around you.
She was brilliant at that kind of distraction. And to this
Hey.
day, she'll say, do I need to do the chicken dance?
That's code for
That's
do I
code.
need to run interference? Do I need to do
Do I need to fall
distraction?
down? Do I need
Now,
to
I left
faint?
this comment up here
Oh, I'm
because
sorry.
this
My
is
bad.
fascinating.
Okay.
This is fascinating. There was an SSI, which means an incarcerated individual doing janitorial work at the prison where Anthony was incarcerated on the Ferguson unit in the 90s. And he had the captain's password to log into the computer, and he could pull cases off of the computer. And that is really fascinating to me. That's pretty incredible. And then Anthony goes on to say how many paroles have been saved by case snatchers, because a
Oh,
case can
yeah,
keep you. Guys, you can make parole in the penitentiary and get some kind of case, and
that's it.
you think you're going home, you're still looking forward to it, and then all of a sudden you're not.
Now,
You're just there.
Marcy, let me tell you what I always wanted to do. There were two things I wanted to do as protest. Okay. Now, first, real quickly, had they made me max out my time, I told everybody that knew me, if I have to max out my time the last day, I'm going to turn out for chow. And on the way to chow, I'm going to start taking my clothes off. And I'm going to walk into that chow hall, butt ass naked, and act like I don't know what's going on. That was what I looked forward to if I had to do all my time.
That's how you survived your time with that and imagery. And we had people. Have you not ever seen people doing cartwheels and all kinds of weird stuff down Main Street on their last day?
Yeah.
And I just love when people are going home. And frankly, even if they've made parole, because at that point, unless you do something that is aggressive, if it's your last day,
Mm-hmm.
and you've made parole and you're on chain and it's your last morning at breakfast, there's not a whole lot you can do to keep from going on chain unless you end up in handcuffs. So, like, if you are aggressive towards someone, that might. And even then, I don't know, it's pretty far in the paperwork, but we would see people doing cartwheels. We would see people flashing, flashing the lieutenant, all kinds of crazy stuff. And the only thing I did was I just yelled at an officer. We were on chain. Now I was still going to save P. So I wasn't out of the system. And so it probably would have gotten worse, but we're standing at line control and she just comes by. We've already been told to untuck our shirts. We're on chain. So I'm living on a unit where our shirts have to be tucked in. We're going on transportation. They're so weird. We might see an incarcerated man somewhere. So we have to untuck our shirts. I mean, it's so odd that that in that during that time, because rules and policies and the way the culture, it just changes in all these weird ways from one moment to the next. But at that time, if you were on chain, you had to have your shirt untucked. So we're at line control, all of us with our shirts untucked. This lady had worked our dorm the night before. She's still on shift. It's early in the morning. She had taken a big old bag of commissary from, at that time, my play brother Gino, shout out Gino, under his cubicle. And okay, so you took it. Okay, so whatever, you wrote it up, you confiscated it, but you tormented him and taunted all night long. Every time you passed by his cubicle, you were saying something, and I was his bunkie. So I was hearing it all night. Just, and he's biting his tongue because he's trying not to get in trouble because it could have escalated. But she was trying to provoke him. And so then the next morning, you want to come out. Why are your shirts untucked? Da, da, da. I said, go ask your lieutenant. And everybody else is like tucking their shirts on. She's like, Simmons, you're going to tuck your shirt. I said, I'm not tucking in shit. She said, what are you doing up here? I said, go ask your lieutenant. Stop talking to me. Like that's my attitude with her because she had been so hateful and tormenting the night before. Now, would I have said all that if I was going back to my dorm and going to see her again? Probably not. Right. But I mean, those last days.
You're on edge. You start to lose your. I always wanted to also, me and my coworker in the library, not Diane, another coworker, that hers was a intense story that y'all wouldn't believe. We have to do a whole nother thing about it one day. The Rangers were involved, her ex-girlfriend snitched. Anyway, but we were sitting there one day during count time and they were down the hall counting. Well, they would leave the cage door open and there's all their stuff. There's their other walkie-talkie. There's everything. We have access to everything, but they were supposed to lock the cage every time they left it, and they wouldn't. I'm like, girl, do you know how bad I want to get that walkie-talkie? And I want to say something like some riddle, like, the sun sets at midnight. I repeat, right? Like something unhinged that sounds like a code. And she was like, oh my God, they would freak out because they wouldn't know where it came from. And our boss is not going to tell the truth that she didn't, oh, it must be them because, so she's going to protect us because she doesn't want to get in trouble for leaving her radio out. I was this close from doing it. I wanted to do it so bad. So bad. But it was like one of those secret sabotages, the way I would empty out chemicals or wash dishes in the
Yeah.
toilet.
Yeah, just to stir it up a little bit. Wash dishes in the toilet. Whose dishes did you wash in the toilet?
Officers.
Oh,
I'm
oh
not your
yeah.
maid.
Yeah. Oh, that always blew my mind when the officers eating in front of you food that you have no access to. And then it's often like at 8 o'clock at night. So your stomach's growling. Dinner was served at 4, and then they were like, go wash this out. Can you wash this out? I'm like, I don't know. Oh, but the radio, you made me think of something. We had an officer that she was there. She enforced rules. She wrote cases only if they were necessary. She gave warnings. She was chill, but bless her, she always brought a lot of stuff with her to work. And we like stuff. We don't have stuff. But we didn't take from officers that were you had to be in the category. Like, I'm not saying I've never taken stuff out of an officer's bag because I absolutely have, but I would not take something out of an officer's bag who treated me respectfully. Like there was a line. Like if you cross that line, you're free game, baby. And I'm going to take whatever you leave behind or leave out, and I might do it right in front of you, and I'm going to share with everybody in the dorm, and that's going to be my best friend's Christmas present and my girlfriend's birthday stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, but her radio, for some reason, she put her radio in her bag also. Somebody grabbed her whole bag. Because she would leave it on the table. She trusted us. She'd leave it on the table and go out. And they had her radio. She'd have gotten in big trouble. So she wasn't trying to call it in for them to roll the cameras back, but the whole dorm was like, I don't know, whoever has it, like,
just go set it down somewhere.
Just go, because we cut for her, we cut for her. She's cool with us. We're not fixing to do her that way. We're not. Yeah. So I don't know, those radios.
Man, if I could have just got one in my hand, I would have.
They'd have locked the whole unit down.
I knew, and that was part of the reason I didn't do it. I felt like the lady would, no, even if she suspects that it was me, she's not going to get herself in trouble, right? And we were going to do it so fast that we were just going to shut the cage behind us, right. And then no, it wasn't us. What are you talking about? But I knew the whole unit would probably get locked down.
Yeah, they would
terrorize us. And by the way, I washed dishes in the toilet of people that treated me like garbage.
I had a roommate one time that washed dishes, her own personal dishes, in our toilet. Now, let me just say, I washed my clothes in that toilet. I'm not like coming down too hard. But again, there was that line that I just couldn't. That wasn't. But she would rinse, because you could like hold it and flush, and then it would.
But baby, these were the toilets in the education.
Oh yeah, you're wrong.
Those were toilets, not the steel toilets that are like power washers. It was a toilet like in a restroom at a gas station.
I need for you to know, if you are a correctional staff that has ever worked in the education building on the Mountain View unit, now called the Patrick O'Daniel unit, you may very well have eaten toilet.
Well, let me say this. It wasn't our regular education officers.
Okay.
And it wasn't them. As much as sometimes I bumped heads with Miss Banks, I didn't wash her. But the ones that substituted or worked in other departments and demanded that I wash their dishes like a servant and yelled at me and talked to me like garbage.
See, sometimes that would happen, though. Officers, when you had a job where the staff kind of treated you a little more respectfully than maybe the average, or they felt like you had it too good? When other staff would come in, it would be horrible. It would be they would bring it, like, "Oh, you think you've got it made up here?" Or yeah,
I
I don't.
remember this lady. She was an older white lady with real short hair, and I remember she came in, and I was back there reading a book. Hey, my library was my haven, and it was the way I wanted it and liked it cleaned, organized. I have everything caught up so I can sit and read my book or read the paper. She comes in there. I could see her staring at me, and I'm like, oh boy, hey, hey, you offender, you get over here. You get over here. Like, with such anger and rage. I was at a 10 here. Like, my whole
Mhm.
body was hot.
Mhm.
And you had, like, I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? But I've got consequences I don't want. And I'm like, yes, ma'am.
Right.
You saw me coming in this door, you help and move, go get, and she was just, it was like I was a servant, right? Go wash these dishes. Did you, like, I'll never forget it. And there were several that were like that would come into the building sometimes.
And I'm
I'm like,
quite certain we weren't supposed to be washing their
honey,
personal
it's
dishes.
against the rules. It's against policy for you to touch, wash, or do any of their personal clothes or dishes. And so I knew that. And that's what made me even more angry. And so then it goes to the secret sabotage stuff. Okay, so what can I do that I'm not going to get in trouble, but will satisfy? Like, I'm chipping away at this somehow. Well, I'm going to dump all the chemicals out. I'm gonna cause problems. I'm going to throw stuff away. I'm going to wash this lady's dishes in the toilet. I'm going to do those small things that cause them irritation and problems. That's the best
Mhm.
I got right now.
Mhm.
And I would teach the other women to do that too. Like,
The same way we're empowering women out here, we were doing it in there. We've gotta talk about, the way that, I mean, I want to just touch on the way that these protests are being met out here. You know, we've kinda talked about how we organized and protested and inside and in women's prisons in a very different, we were careful in how we maneuvered ways. So how does that compare with what's going on at the universities across the nation, really? But we're, of course, we're hearing it concentrated here in Texas.
well, I mean, I think it's just a more um, blatant display of the police state.
There's an image that was going around social media of a young person, a student, on her knees, handcuffed, officers surrounding her, and I don't know if she had been sprayed in some way or what, but you could see other students, like, trying to hand her water, like, trying to give her, not hand because she was handcuffed, but give her water, like water bottles towards her. Have you seen that image?
Mm-hmm.
It made me think about how we would try to help each other. We wouldn't have been able to do it right in front of a staff member like that, and I don't just mean necessarily with water, although when you have been recently sprayed and you're just left out in the sun, because that happens, somebody gets sprayed and then they're handcuffed out in the middle of the sun with no water, they're not able to flush their eyes. You want to be able to help them, but that wouldn't have been an option. I'm just trying to think of the ways post, like when it's already escalated and it was usually only then at that point one or two people, how we would want to help them, like that picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think you help in whatever way that you feel led to, right? I think that was all we could do, right? Because the power imbalance is so large. What are you willing to risk? What is important to you in this moment? right? Like you have to balance that, right? Like because there's real threat of harm, right? The state and the police, they have, I mean, I'm going to, we have the power. We have power that we don't know that we have. They have the power, especially in those moments. And I think that's what we learned when we were locked up. It's like, well, especially I'm just speaking from a woman's perspective, right? Like there's more of them. They're equipped. They're stronger. They're can hurt us physically. What are the ways that we protest that minimizes our harm? But there are times that it has to be a huge confrontation. I think it's just the individual. What am I willing to? What am I willing to do in this moment? And weighing out what the possible outcomes would be.
It's me yelling at my dogs. I've tried pounding on the wall. I hope that they don't make it into the recording. No, I think that that's it. It's weighing the pros and cons. We were constantly doing that inside. No matter how I want to make my friend a birthday cake for her birthday, what's the risk? We were always gauging the risk factor, figuring out and it was just an environment where we were constantly everything we did. If I go to the bathroom and leave my bed unmade, I had to make that decision. If I had to weigh the risks. Who's the officer? Where is the officer? Is the officer going to come by and see my bed unmade and me not in my cubicle and tear my house up? Like this is how we had to live in there. So
Right from the small things all the way to the big things of, okay, this lady, there's this moment of confrontation with this officer. What's going to happen next? Right? Like, we're going to talk on this damn phone because we haven't talked to our family in weeks. And we don't care if you spray us or beat us. We are not moving from this phone.
yes.
And so then you balance out, okay, they might truly beat us and spray us. Is this important to me? Is this important to what I have to say? And and I think especially with young people and students, I think the police state response to protesting and organizing over not just the current protests, but several years ago, I think we're seeing a more and more blatant display of state policing. So what happens next as our country may politically go in a way that continues to make that more of a police state than it is? I mean, now it's just bold. It's just now it's just clearly.
Well, isn't there's a law in Texas that did it pass saying no public protesting? What did it say? Do we know? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I know there was legislation that said you couldn't protest and block streets.
Okay, so
Right,
that's maybe
because
what I'm
that was one of the sneaky ways to start chipping away at the
Mhm.
freedoms of organizing and protesting. And Susie's right. It is fascism, like state police suppressing people's freedom of speech.
Well, there's definitely a fear for I think the average citizen has a fear of legal repercussions that, that could come anytime the police get involved, and I was just thinking about even when we were in front of the federal prison having a press conference, and we didn't want to stand across the street because we thought, well, they might just call the cops on us right there, and I'm on parole. So let's just have it right over here in this nice little safe spot where we're still going to be on TV, but maybe the prison doesn't even know we're here right now, kind of
Yeah.
thing. attention, and that's kind of how I think a lot of people just navigate.
Well, but Marci, this is the problem of that, right? Is this is the problem of what happens to women on the inside, is that, well, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to, so then what happens, and this is a very, not as an intense example, but, well, we were over policed. I mean, I don't believe in police in any way, but you know what I mean? Like, we were nitpicked. We were squeezed harder and harder. The more that we complied, and the more that we were good girls, and the more that we said, okay, the more they squeezed us, while the men would instantly react and instantly protest and instantly show a force, and they would instantly back down. Now, not that they don't push back, but it just goes to show that the belief that there's safety in not saying anything and not getting involved and not, being a problem.
Right. It creates more
So
oppression.
it creates more and more squeezing, right? And that's what I knew to be our problem on the inside. It's like, they do us like this because I'm testing your boundaries. And so the state is constantly testing the citizens' boundaries. Oh, you're going to take this? You're going to take this? And the more people are afraid, the tighter and worse that it gets. And how do you balance that, especially with somebody with a criminal background? Well, I think it just goes to the nature of organizing, of how do we do this in a way that all the different methods, the big overt methods our brothers used on the inside, and the very covert sabotaging, it all works together, and everybody has a role. You just have to figure out what role that is.
Yes, yes. That was some incredible final thoughts, Toochi. We're over our hour because we really got into it the last few minutes. Do you have anything else you need to add before we wrap it up?
I just wish people really understand what a dangerous time that we live in. I really do.
Yes.
Do something. You have to do something. This is going bad quickly.
Toochi, we have a guest next week who is a transgender man, my good friend Chris, who was incarcerated in Texas women's prisons, and he actually did time on hobby unit. He's going to be with us next week as we kind of explore the special ways that his population and his community were oppressed even further inside of the Texas prison system. So you guys be sure and tune in. We'll be here the same time, same place, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. And we'll see everybody then. You guys, thanks for hitting the like button, commenting, sharing the live. We appreciate you all so much.
Out with us on the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast with